With Stephanie White under fire by Fever fans, she blasted her team after the squad's loss to the Golden State Valkyries, which was a rough watch. No question about it. Here's what Stephanie White said immediately afterwards in regards to basically what went wrong and why, the Fever fell so flat.
How do you summarize kind of what you saw out there?
I was disappointed because I felt like there was a lack of competitive fire. With the exception of about 2 5-minute spurts, our attention to detail was poor. I'm not sure if it's not knowing the game plan as much as, because if it's not knowing the game plan, then that's a whole nother conversation, as much as not executing the game plan. Our attention to detail, undisciplined. I felt like our energy and our competitive fire was not there, and that's disappointing.
I guess, why do you think you had some of these inconsistencies when it comes to focus and engagement, things like that?
I'd say discipline more so than focus. I think this is a group that focuses, but you can focus, and then you have to be able to go out and be disciplined enough to execute it, right? I'm not sure. We're as coaches, that's our job to figure it out. Why it is. You've seen it in spurts, you've seen it in moments, you've seen it with certain lineups. So finding, for us, finding those lineups that we've seen it with consistently and maybe keeping those together. There's always going to be adjustments when you're working people back into the lineup. There's no question about that. But the competitiveness and the attention to detail, and willingness to play with multiple levels of effort. Prime examples when we get defensive stops, but then they get multiple offensive rebounds. That's 1-2. That's competitive fire. And that's unacceptable.
A lot of what she said there is fair, and I agree with. I think, to me, one of the biggest issues in that game and in that loss was the multiple possessions that the Valkyries got on some of those opportunities that she referenced there. Particularly, I think it was 55-50 was the score when they got another opportunity. So some of what Stephanie White says there is correct, but she's going to get criticism because of the mixing of the lineups and the way Caitlin Clark was utilized, or the idea of playing Caitlin Clark off the ball, which has been an on and off topic all season long. Here's what Caitlin Clark said about what went wrong for the team when she was asked about coming back and getting her sea legs.
Galen, we'll start with you. Just how did it, first of all, feel to be out there? And second of all, what do you think the offense was just so disjointed here today?
It felt good to be out there. I thought we started really well. I thought we were competitive. I thought we played with energy in the first 5 minutes. And then, when they kind of went on their first run, it kind of deflated us a little bit, which I'm not really sure why. But the offense, I think, for us, it starts on defense. And we, struggled, scouting report wise. We struggled personnel. We struggled to do what the coaches asked of us. And then, overall, we just played with more energy and effort. And, those are the things that just can't happen. So, it's every single person on our team, and, nobody played well today. And, you should look yourself in the mirror and find ways where you can get better and, come back to practice tomorrow and then play again on Friday.
So effort stuff is always hard for me because, yes, obviously you want to not be out efforted, but what do you say about that? Right? It happens sometimes. It does happen sometimes. And the Valkyries brought more effort than the Fever, who were flat. What about the strategic aspect of it? What about the long-term implications and the little bit of a back and forth that's been going on stylistically between the head coach and the star player, which was hinted at? Steffi White said she wanted to work with 2 ball handlers and take some of the pressure off of Caitlin Clark. Here's a little bit more of the coach's presser.
Play under duress 94 feet the entire time she's on the floor.
There it is, actually, right where I was looking for.
Floor, particularly with a team that comes aggressively.
Back.
And that's unacceptable.
Yeah, you had that lineup change, kind of putting Caitlin in for Lexi instead of Ari. Just what did you like about Caitlin and Ari starting the game together and Lexi coming off the bench?
Yeah, I like the ability to have 2 primary ball handlers on the floor, particularly with a team that comes aggressively, in the 2-man game. Being able to play off of one another, being able to give the opponent some different looks, and quite frankly, for C specifically, not having to have her play under duress 94 feet the entire time she's on the floor. So there were some things that we liked about it. There were some things that we don't. So we'll continue to work with that.
Just in general, with Caitlin returning to the floor today, a little short of 25 minutes. How did you think she looked out there? And she said like it might take a little bit of time for her to get her win back, but it's nothing, just kind of the normal thing you'd expect out of that point.
Yeah, I thought there were periods of time where she really looked good. I was really pleased, especially the first play of the game with, I think she had like 2 or 3 deflections on that first possession defensively. I don't know, maybe I'm naive, but I don't worry about Caitlin getting back into the flow offensively. I worry about, I wouldn't say worry, but I think my biggest concern is when we reintegrate her, how do we continue to keep our ball movement and getting the ball going, not just side to side, but baseline to baseline. But I was a little bit concerned, defensively, just lots of movement, lots of lateral movement. I thought she looked good, at times, and I think that's just building consistency and building her endurance and all of that. So I was pleased.
So, that's an interesting comment there from the coach, because it's been a bit of a back and forth. I remember the first Liberty game where before the game, you had a little bit of that, where Stephanie White was talking about not, being so predictable for the opposition. And Caitlin Clark was saying, we're at our best with me in with the ball in my hands and getting going in transition. And so when she says that thing about baseline to baseline and getting the ball popping, I can't help but think about a comment Stephanie White made on an ESPN broadcast about Luka Doncic. I can't play it because I'll get, dinged for using the broadcast footage. But you see the Mavs just play differently without Luka on the floor. When he's not on that floor, the ball is moving. It's popping. Multiple players getting involved in the action. So it does give you a little insight into how Coach White thinks at times and where there may be a bit of a philosophical struggle, an identity struggle with the Fever. I believe still that Stephanie White is a good coach. And obviously, I believe Caitlin Clark is a transcendent talent. And I believe their relationship is built on mutual respect. So it will figure itself out, and they will figure it out. And we've seen these glimpses, right? We've seen these glimpses where I do believe the Fever at their best can still be what I've talked about and what I've discussed. But at the same time, I am putting a pin in that, what I just said there. Because if this continues to percolate, it is worth revisiting that and looking at the overall makeup of this team, the overall direction of this team, and what Indiana believes its identity is going to be. Because if there are more performances like the one against the Valkyries, it's always the head coach who comes under fire first.